Now today's lesson is going to be a very simple applique design. It's going to be a baseball, so it's going to consist of a circle and some satin stitches. We're going to bring in the artwork. We're going to assess how to do this as efficiently and quickly as possible while still getting quality stitch results. Inner Circle members in your classroom, download the lesson files below this tutorial. YouTube viewers, check out the EL software link in the description below. Now the first thing we're going to do is load in our backdrop. So I'm going to go to my backdrop tab right here and click on the button, click on load backdrop, and this is the design that we're going to bring in. It is a PNG file. It'll come into the software and it will fill up the screen. Now here's what you're going to do. You're going to go back into your backdrop tab and you're going to select the backdrop, and once you've selected it, you can right click on the image because it does have wireframes around it, and I can click on properties and the properties dialog will come up, and it says this is 7 by 7 inches right now. So we're going to change this size. Let's do just a 4-inch design. Now if you are in millimeters, you can change between metric and millimeters just right up here on this little button right here, this little tab. So I'll toggle between metric to imperial, and I'm going to make sure that I am in imperial, which is inches, go to 4 inches and hit enter. And that is going to give me a 4 by 4 because my maintain aspect ratio is on. And then I'm going to come here and I'm just going to click the opacity about 50% just so that it's not super bright on screen, a little easier for me to visually see the objects that I'm creating. And then I'm going to look at this right now, and I have a 0 mark here on my screen and I have a 0 mark here. Well, it's highlighted. I'm just going to kind of go over and line up these zeros and zeros so that I'm about center on this object. And the reason why is the first thing I want to do is kind of assess this artwork and see if those red stitches are symmetrical within the design. And if I want to see if they are, I can go up to this top ruler and kind of drag a line down, and I can see right there that they aren't perfect, because if these were perfect, if they were a mirror image of each other, then I would say that I could, digitize one side and just switch it over and, rotate it on the horizontal and vertical, and I would have that done in half the time because I wouldn't have to redigitize it. So if I really wanted this to be exact as the artwork, I would probably manually digitize one side and then the other. But because this design is, something that I'm just going to do, I think it would be better if it was symmetrical. I'm just going to do the one side here, this side right here, and then I'm going to actually, flip it on the horizontal and the vertical to create the second line. So that way it's going to be quicker and it will look, technically perfect. Now this is going to be an applique stitch around the outside right here. So what I can do is I can come in and I can digitize just the applique first, and I can resequence my objects. So when I come in right now to my, zoom ratio, because I'm just doing a circle, I can just kind of zoom in. I can hit my space bar, which is going to allow me to left click and move my object wherever I want it. And I don't have to zoom into, my exact scale, like 300 or 600, because I'm really just creating a circle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here to my widget. My widget has all of my tools for digitizing, my brushes. And if I click on my brushes, I see that there is one called Applique. And the Applique brush will essentially give me a, placement stitch. It'll give me a tack down stitch, and it'll give me a finishing stitch. And it does it, automatically, which is what I really like. So I'm just going to click on Applique. I am going to choose the black color, so I'm on black, and I'm going to choose a shape. So let's just choose a circle. And now, because it is a perfect circle, I can come right here about halfway, and I'm just going to do this and go all the way around here. And let's see, that is pretty much perfect right there. So, I just want to try to have it as perfect as I possibly can, which would be right about there on the design. I can see again, it's not 100% symmetrical, but doesn't really matter. I'm just going to click on that and boom, there my applique is done. Now, if I turn on my 3D, I can see that I have an applique there, I think if I go to my properties and select this, it is actually set to 2.5 inches. So I'll probably want to increase that a little bit. I'm going to make it a 3 millimeter, sorry, not 2.5 inches, 2.5 millimeter stitch width. I'm going to change it to 3, which is going to make it a little bit wider. And I think that is perfect. And I can see that I have a placement line, a tack down line. You can do a zigzag. And then we have the border that finishes it up. So I'm just going to leave it exactly like that for now. And that way I can see that all of my stitches are there. If I want to see sort of how this runs in order, I can come here and I can do this and just sort of press the play button. And this gives me my redraw. So there I can see my placement. There I can see my tack down, and it will do a double zigzag, which will hold that material in place. And then it does the finishing stitch. So there is my applique. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to digitize this object here, and then I'm going to resequence and break everything apart so that it runs in the order that I want. But I'm going to create this right now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a couple of different tools here. I'm going to use my classic satin stitch, and I'm going to use my line input because with the classic satin, the line is the only one that you can. And I'm going to toggle between that and a running stitch as I create this. So I'm just going to come here on this side, start creating this, and we'll get started with doing this outline here. So now I'm going to zoom into my artwork to my 6:1 scale. So within my little view tab here, I have my different scales at 6:1 on a 32-inch monitor. This is what I'm seeing. If you have a smaller monitor, then it's going to probably look a little bit more zoomed in, and that way you can adjust between, let's say, 300 to 600, depending on what you want to digitize at. I tend to like to do everything at a consistent scale so it looks nice and clean. I'm just going to toggle right over here so I can get started. I'm going to choose a red line so that I have a color that is, friendly to the artwork. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my brushes and I'm going to use the classic satin. So I have a classic satin here and I do have a run, and I'm going to be using a combination of these two as I go through this objects because I have to do each one of these little pieces. And I can see that it's not just a straight line. It has a different width from the top to the bottom, and it looks like there's a little bit of a rounded edge there. So I'm going to go to my classic satin, and then I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to cut this short a little bit for my push compensation. I know that within my software right now, I do have it set to cotton, which would be fine for an applique material because this is going to be an applique. So the underlay and everything should be fine, and the pull comp and the density within my recipe. And I'm just going to come here, I'm going to do a point, and I'm going to do a couple points here to create that kind of little rounded piece. I'm not using curves. I'm not using right clicks. I'm just using lefts because it's so small. And then I'm just going to put a point here and hit enter. And there's my object, and I can see that there's a little trim there. Now for this one here, I'm just going to come over to the other side and do the same thing, couple little points there, just kind of getting that little curve, and I'm going to come here to here, enter. Because these are so close and because my software does have the smart join and trim and lock on, I don't have to worry. But now when I'm from this point here and I'm going to travel to the next objects, I am going to switch from my classic satin to a run. So I can either click on my widget to go to a run, so now I'm back to my run stitch, or I can toggle between my run and my classic satin with my hotkeys. The number 2 key is for my classic, and the number 1 key on my keyboard is for the run. So I just find that that's easier to do than than doing it now. Here I do want to let you know that right now I do have to make sure that I look, because the last object that I used when I created something was actually a shape. And if you look, the input is actually not registering. So I'm going to click on this and do a line input. If I left it on a circle, I'd just be creating little circles. So if you're doing this and you're seeing that you're trying to after you've made your applique using the circle tool and you're going like this, and you see that you have all these strange little pieces coming, it's because you're trying to create tiny, tiny little circles, and that's not going to work. So I'm just going to undo all of those so I get back to where I was, and I'm going to make sure that I switch from my circle shape to my input, and I'm going to use the line. And all I'm going to do now is go from here, and I can travel to this object, hit enter, and now that piece is done. And then I hit 2 on my keyboard, and I can continue on with my classic satin. and I just come over here, do this piece right to here, and enter. Then I can come over here, again, cutting short that open end a little bit. And then same thing, I'm just going to do this piece from here to here, hit enter, then go back to my 1 key and travel to the next object. So I'm just going between my 2 stitch types, a classic satin and a run stitch. I'm using my hotkeys, my number 1 and 2 on my keyboard, and that way it's, super fast and easy. And just hitting the enter button to generate these objects. So I'm going to generate this one right here, enter, go to a run stitch, continue to the next object, and then I can hold the space bar down and kind of left click and move if I want to pan. So I just pan down a little bit. I'm going to go to my number 2, which is my classic satin, and we'll just do this little piece right here. And again, doing that piece, enter, then doing this one and going across. Just, I don't necessarily have to worry about curves because this is so small at a 6:1 scale. It's going to give me the same result whether I use a straight or a curve. Go back to my run, hit enter, hit the 2, go back to my classic satin, and I'm just going to continue to do all these little, pieces within the stitching of the baseball and toggling between a classic satin and a run stitch as I move forward on this design. Back to my classic satin, come right to here, do this piece, come right to here, then I'm going to hit the space bar, pan up so that I can get the area on the screen, go back to my run, and run right there. I know that my underlay is automatically being put down because of my recipe that I've chosen. And now I'm going to do this side here, again cutting short a little bit on the open end for my push. Go back to my run, go back to my classic satin, and we just have 4 more little objects to do. There's number 1, here's number 2, and then we are going to run to the next objects, go back to here, and then do this side to here. Oops, I did not want to enter there, so I can always back up if I went too far. I'm going to now redo this. I entered a little too quickly. There, we're going to enter. And now for this piece here, I'm just going to underlap it a little bit and do this as a classic satin point counterpoint. Now I just have to pan. I can pan while I am in my stitch type, which is super handy. And now I'm just going to pan again as I get to the top. And there I am. Actually, let's do this to here, pan, and do this one, and enter. So there's my object done. Now I'm just going to zoom back out of this a bit so that I can see that object that I just created. And I'm going to come here, and this is where I'm going to look at my sequence view. So I'm going to call up my sequence view. I'm going to look at that last object that I just created, which is right here. I'm going to select it all. And this is where, well, it's all highlighted. I can see that this is highlighted now. If I take my 3D off, I can see the outlines that it's highlighted. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right over here and I'm going to flip it. And I'm going to flip it horizontally. And I'm going to then come back and flip it vertically. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to just kind of line up so that it's going to be in place. And I'm kind of eyeballing it because, as we said, the artwork wasn't 100% symmetrical, but I really don't care that the artwork isn't perfect because this is actually going to look really good when it's done. And then I'm just going to hit that. So now here's what I have to look at is I have a point right here. That is my last object, and I'm going to go down through my sequence view, and I can see that this here is the object right there, and then the next object is going to be this one right here, which is down at the bottom. So that means I'm finishing here, but I want to start right there. So what I need to do is I need to go to this object here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to say digitize after. And because I'm on my point here, I'm going to say digitize after, and now I'm going to go to a run stitch. So I'm going to go to a run, and I'm going to go from this point, and I'm just going to go down, and I can use a curve if I want, but I'm just going to travel right from here, and I'm going to go right to this point right over here, because this is the next object right here, and hit enter. And now I can see that I have this object right here. So there's that object right there. It finished off stitching. Now it's going to run to the next object, and then it's going to do this one right here. So now I've connected those stitches, so it's not going to trim or jump. It's going to actually finish sewing and then keep going. If I look at this, how it's going to sew, and again, we are going to resequence this, but I can see that it's doing this piece here. Let's turn on our 3D. Let's go in here and turn off our artwork now, because we don't need to view the artwork anymore. But there it's doing that little piece there. Then it's going to do this one to here. It's going to do all of these pieces, come to here, travel down, do these pieces right here, and then it is actually done. Okay, now I do see right here, and I don't know why, but let's just go here. And right here, oh, because it looks like there's a little trimmer there because it's going to sew back down the other side. I thought I might have missed something, but I didn't. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the top right here, and I'm going to look at this because I have to resequence it. My design is pretty much done, but obviously I don't want to have this, sewing over top of the actual applique. I want to resequence this underneath. So what I have to do is grab this applique piece right here. And now, well, it is actually all selected, because when I select one of them, it selects all three. It's going to select the placement, the tack down, and the finishing stitch. If I right click on that while it's selected, I can break apart my applique. This will allow me to break it apart. And now that it's broken apart, I can actually take this, and I can take this object right here. So I'm going to unselect these ones. They're unselected now. Let's turn the 3D off. And I'm just going to select this one. And now I'm going to move it in the sewing order right to here. So it's right up, underneath. So it's going to do this piece here first. It's going to do this object first. Let's just take this off, this object first. Then it's going to come in and it's going to tack it down. And then it's going to do the stitching. And then it's going to do the finishing stitch afterwards. And because it's doing the finishing stitch afterwards, and now it just sees an actual, satin stitch, I can come in here and I can turn on my underlay, and let's just use a, depends, I could choose anything. I could use a parallel underlay, which would give me a zigzag. I could do a, perpendicular if I wanted to. Or I could choose a contour, which is like an edge run. And I'm going to use the contour just so I have some stitches going around to define that. It's going to keep everything nice and clean. And this design is pretty much done. So when I look at this, how it's going to sew, it's going to come in. Let's turn on the 3D. It's going to do my outline stitch, which shows me where to place my material. Then it's going to tack the material down. After that, I'm going to stop the machine, cut out my applique. Then it's going to do all of these stitches here that are going to be all of the, red stitching within the baseball. Comes on one side, finishes this object. It's going to travel to the other side, do this. It's perfectly symmetrical. After it does that, it'll just do the finishing stitch, which will give me a edge run with my satin going around the outside. And I will have a nice clean applique design done, very, very quickly, but it's going to be very machine friendly. Now, the most important thing to always do whenever you finish the design is to make sure that you save the native file format. So I am going to save the JDX file. I'm calling it baseball applique. Once I have that saved, then I can continue to go on and save the file as, whatever flavor my machine speaks. In my case, I'm using the Tajima Sai, so I'm going to save it as a DST file, and that is what I'm going to run on my machine. So let's run this sample and see how it looks. Well, the design is done and it looks super clean. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Be sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you're notified every time we release a new video, and comment below. See you next time. Inner Circle members, don't forget to download your lesson files below. Not a member yet? Join the Inner Circle and get access to exclusive bonuses, hands-on training, and everything you need to master embroidery digitizing. Click the link in the description to get started. Want to keep learning? Check out these tutorials next and take your embroidery skills even further.